I want to continue this discussion of today's Oversight Committee hearing on protecting speech from government interference and social media bias. Now that the Republicans control these committees in the House, we're going to see a lot more of these hearings. But the question I have here is, how might these hearings, like this one held today, impact big tech? How is it going to affect them moving forward? Because that's what we want to do. We want to move the needle. Joining me now to discuss this is Scott Shepard. He's a fellow at the National Center and director of the National Center's Free Enterprise Project. Scott, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you, Tony.
So very quickly, Scott, your reaction to the Oversight Committee's hearing today?
Well, in a sense, it was hilarious. I mean, Yoel Roth claiming that he's nonpartisan is one of the most astonishing statements ever said. I don't know if he was under oath, but if he was under oath, his right hand should have burned off. I mean, he has made it very, very clear that during his time at Twitter as the head of their censorship department, he was on a mission to downplay and to eliminate what he considered dangerous speech, not false, not inaccurate, not hate speech, although in his case, in his view, anything that he disagreed with was hate speech. But dangerous speech just meant speech about things or taking positions that Yoel Roth personally disagreed with. And so that was revealing. I think that James Baker being available. We remember that James Baker was an FBI operative before he went over to Twitter. And the idea that he wasn't getting information and direction from his pals still at the FBI and confidential information are things that Congress should look into. And hopefully, sooner rather than later, we're going to have a non-corrupt Justice Department again. And then we can start criminal investigations, because if the government was colluding with Twitter to deny American civil rights in ways that a government couldn't directly do, like abridging speech rights, and that's a crime, and some people should go to jail.
So, Scott, we were just talking with Congressman Pat Fallon, and I asked him, is this just reflective of what's happening in the other big tech companies that have been censoring conservatives and maybe colluding with the government? So, figuratively speaking, because I know we don't usually use paper anymore, but are the shredders going right now? I mean, when you're talking about as they see these hearings and what's coming, I mean, are they shredding the documents?
Oh, I'm sure there's some of that, but recall that Deadeye's Mark Zuckerberg has made comments to Joe Rogan, maybe, in another forum, saying, yeah, the FBI essentially lied to us to coerce us to do some censoring and discriminating. That's something that he should be subpoenaed. All the records should be subpoenaed. Nick Clegg should be subpoenaed. He's the chief censor over at Facebook. And they should be put in jail if they reject the subpoenas. That's now after Steve Bannon, that's right. Now the rule. And they should be made to go through this in exquisite detail under oath. Because we know it was happening at Facebook. We know that Google's doing it too, and they lie constantly about it.
Is this going to lead to behavior modification with big tech?
I think that if this is the beginning of a long and probably tortuous, but also insightful process, I think it will lead to big change. But I've got to tell you, my organization, the Free Enterprise Project, deals fairly regularly with corporate executives and their level of self-delusion. Well, let me give you the example of Larry Fink over at the World Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago, whining to his buddies that, gosh, all he wanted to do was to force companies to do things like decarbonization on his schedule and equity-based discrimination. And gosh golly, the people who oppose it are just making it all so partisan. Well, that level of delusion is very strong at the top of these corporations. So eventually they'll get the point and they'll feel threatened, as they should, by the law and by public reaction. But it's going to take a lot more than one hearing.
You know, Scott, I used to think that when it came to business, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, big tech, we're talking about corporate America with their woke agenda. I used to think that the dollar and profit were the driving forces, but I don't see that so much anymore. How do you get their attention? What is it that will force that, other than jail time, what is it that will force behavior change?
Well, what we'd like to see are a series of shareholder derivative lawsuits, because these companies, whatever they may blather about stakeholder capitalism or about ESG not being political or partisan or anything, they still have fiduciary duties to do the objective will of shareholders, which means not doing their personal policy preferences, not self-dealing, not advancing their own private interests with company money. So some shareholder derivative lawsuits or similar that were to establish that non-pecuniary self-dealing is still self-dealing and took a lot of money out of some executives' pockets. That would get their attention very fast. And I don't think it would take too many of those suits and successes to bring the
So
behavior right back.
it's their personal bottom line that gets the attention when you say they have a fiduciary duty with the money entrusted in to make a profit. That's why people invest in them. And if they're using that to pursue their own fanciful leftist ideologically driven agenda, then they have some exposure there.
That's exactly right, and I think that will be the lever that I don't know how to finish that sentence, but that'll be what makes them change their minds and their behaviors.
Well, I hope we see a lot of those lawsuits coming up. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. Great to talk with you today.
Thank you, Tony. Anytime.